Hello and welcome to Ask Me Anything, a series from Security Magazine where security leaders answer your questions about best practices for risk management to the ins and outs of their position. I'm your host, Madeline Laver, Assistant Editor of Security Magazine. Today, I'm joined by Meg West, X-Force Cybersecurity Incident Response Consultant at IBM. Meg has worked on the forefront of incident response throughout her career, having held analyst and managerial roles in cybersecurity, as well as earning numerous awards and certifications, including a CCSP, CISSP at the age of 24, and being named one of Security Magazine's 2022 top cybersecurity leaders. Welcome, Meg.
Thank you so much, Madeline. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Readers across our social media platforms submitted their questions for you today, so let's just get right into it. The first question we received is, what was your journey into cybersecurity like?
I don't think that my journey into cybersecurity was a very traditional one. When you hear about people getting into cyber, oftentimes they start at help desk, then they perhaps go on to be a sysadmin. They kind of funnel through the IT channel, if you will. I was very blessed to have been working at a Fortune 100 company. I like to joke that it's the Fortune 100 no one's ever heard of. It's now called TD SYNNEX. They do distribution and supply chain management in the background. And I was working actually on their business side, doing kind of cloud migration, helping clients migrate from on premises to the cloud. And at the same time, I was going to university to get my master's in cybersecurity degree. Well, I saw that there was an associate cybersecurity analyst position that opened up at the same company on the IT side. And I thought, you know what? I don't have any experience in that role, but it is what I'm getting my degree in. I'm really passionate about it. I was using TryHackMe. I was doing a lot of at home things with the home lab, trying to bolster my cybersecurity skills. So I thought, I'm just going to apply for it. What happens, happens. And I ended up applying for the role. It was an entry level position. Thankfully, that didn't require any experience. I had several interviews and I ended up landing the job. I fully equate my ability to get that job to my having a really good proficiency in communicating why I was the best fit for the job, how I was going to be able to help the team, how I could boost morale, how quickly I was willing to learn. It really wasn't about my technical skills because I didn't have any experience in the field, rather, my ability to portray myself as someone who would be the best fit for the role.
That's really interesting, and we're going to get more into talent acquisition in cyber and your advice for that too, but I'd love to talk a bit about cyber strategy. One question that we had was, how can enterprise organizations improve their cybersecurity posture if they're either starting off or they just want to upgrade it? What advice do you have for that?
That's a great question, and honestly, a question that I get asked all the time. I feel like the answer to this hasn't changed in several years. Everything has kind of stood still. And really, any cybersecurity professional you ask, there are going to be various answers to it, but they're all going to be centric around, do you have MFA enabled? Is your cybersecurity program utilizing a top down strategy? Meaning, does your very top management enforce cybersecurity? If you don't have backing from your senior management all the way down, then the people who are actually going to be doing the groundwork, they're not going to be following the cybersecurity rules. Are you implementing security awareness trainings, whether it's biannually or once annually? Are you making your employees and colleagues aware of what they can be doing so that they can uphold the highest level of cybersecurity? Are you utilizing a defense in depth strategy? There's just several different things that are all at the top of my brain that can be utilized in order to kind of promote that idea.
Another question we had from one of our readers is, what are the biggest issues or threats within cybersecurity right now?
Oh, there's so many.
It's a big question.
Yeah. So I think right now, and this is probably going to be the most resounding answer for anyone, ransomware is a huge threat. Ransomware as a service is proliferating, and ransomware as a service, if you're not familiar with it, it's effectively the idea that anyone can rent out as a subscription service malicious threat actors data center, if you will. Let's call it a data center for lack of better words, and utilize that functionality, the storage, the compute, processing power, et cetera, to ransomware another organization. So they don't necessarily have to have the infrastructure themselves. They're actually threat actors that are leasing out their infrastructure so that more people can commit ransomware. It's a business model, which is kind of scary, right? Besides that, I think that insider threat is a really big one that we're seeing lately, even if it's not on purpose. You know, when we hear insider threats, you often think someone has malicious intentions within an organization. But all the time, we're seeing people who accidentally send an email that contains extremely sensitive data, or perhaps PII or PHI. They just CC the wrong person on the email. And suddenly, this person who shouldn't have that information has it, right? So there are various different things that are really affecting the industry right now. Right now, with cloud proliferating so widely, misconfigurations in the cloud is a huge one, whether it's incorrectly configuring your NSG, and NSG meaning network security group, it's kind of a cloud equivalent of a firewall. Just not having appropriate permissions configured for people who are accessing things, not keeping an eyeball on your supply chain. Supply chain attacks are really huge right now. Third party compromise, you know, with SolarWinds that happened a couple years ago, that's really put the spotlight on supply chain attacks. So I'd say those are some of the biggest things between ransomware, supply chain, misconfigurations, just accidental things ongoing within your organization, and insider threats.
A question that we had from Twitter, I feel like connects to that, which is how do you stay current with these new threats and emerging tools? How do you keep up in such a rapidly changing threat landscape?
And that's a really great question. And I'll be completely honest and forthright with you that it's impossible to keep track of everything that's going on. I remember when I first began in cybersecurity, I felt the pressure to constantly be staying current on what was going on in the industry. I would try to learn about what was going on with cloud, what was going on with blockchain, what was going on with the emerging threats, what the latest and greatest security tools are. And it was just completely overwhelming. It's way too much information. Instead of trying to digest and consume all of this information that's so vast and broad, I would really try to pick one or two subfields of cybersecurity that are relevant to your specific job or where you're trying to go within the cybersecurity world and focus on those. So, for me specifically, the two things that are most important to me are going to be incident response, which isn't really often the topic that we read about. Perhaps we're more reading about, like you said, the threats that are coming out, the critical 0-day vulnerabilities and whatnot. And I'm also really curious about cloud too. So instead of trying to consume every piece of information that comes across, you know, my computer, I'm just focusing on what's going to be important and relevant to myself and what is also I'm curious about. In terms of where to get that information, there are so many places, but where I utilize mostly, I go on Reddit, which I know it sounds kind of funny because you're thinking, oh, Reddit's just, you know, the silly place to go have fun. And people are really mean on Reddit. But Reddit has a plethora of awesome information. Oftentimes, when there are cybersecurity and 0 days and emerging threats, you're going to see them happen being shared on Reddit first. Second, I like using Twitter. Twitter is a hot spot for cybersecurity professionals, and oftentimes we're seeing new information hit Twitter before you actually see it in the news. And then I also love watching Twitch streams, YouTube, etc. All the cybersecurity professionals who are sharing their own information about what they're doing in their day job or teaching information about cybersecurity.
That's really interesting looking at social media as a source because it's like you're coming directly from the original source rather than going through different
Right.
layers and having to wait for more information.
Right. And it's really interesting because certain threat actors like Conti ransomware, et cetera, they have Twitter accounts and they will utilize Twitter to proliferate information about what attacks they're doing and whatnot, or about what tactics they're using. So, absolutely, Twitter by far is one of the top resources when it comes to trying to stay in the loop for what's going on in the cybersecurity world.
We had a couple career-related questions asked, and so I wanted to pass this one along. What do you do to stay motivated in your job or when you're feeling burnout?
Honestly, I've been feeling burnt out lately. And the thing that I always tell myself is it's okay to feel burnt out. It's okay to take breaks. There was a very long time in my career, probably the first almost 4 years working in cybersecurity where I was just go, go, go. It was, how can I get to the next position? How can I get the next certification? How can I, achieve the next thing, get accepted to speak at the next conference? I was constantly always focusing on what I could do next. And that was fantastic for me. It's gotten me to a great spot. I love what I do. I love the people I get to speak with. I feel, very thankful for the platform that I have. But I'm tired now. I'm very tired. And unfortunately, you get to this spot where you're like, man, I don't want to spend my time after work studying for a certification. And people feel ashamed or guilty about that because unfortunately, there's this air within cybersecurity that if you're not constantly doing cybersecurity, then you're not worthy of being in the field or you're not a good enough cybersecurity professional. And I'm here to tell you that that's completely inaccurate. If you can't sit down at your day job in the morning and put forth your best effort and be curious and interested and be considerate and passionate about helping out your company, then you're probably a bit too burnt out. And if you're so burnt out that you can't do your job appropriately, that you're missing, overlooking alerts or possible incidents, that you're misconfiguring firewalls or privileges or something, companies don't want that. They don't want you to be burnt out. They should want you to have a healthy balance between progressing in cybersecurity, keeping aware of what's going on in the cybersecurity world, but also taking a break and not focusing on cybersecurity. So personally, what I'm trying to do to get myself out of my so-called rut that I'm in right now, and I say rut, but I'm still like doing top notch at my job. I'm still learning things outside of work about cybersecurity. I'm just not at my same caliber that I'm used to. But how I'm trying to counteract that is by going to the gym every day. I'm really active, hanging out with friends, focusing and channeling energy into things that aren't in front of a computer. We spend so much time sitting in front of a computer every day, it can be exhausting. You do get burnt out. So finding something to be passionate about hobby wise or anything that gets you outside is just going to be fantastic. And not putting pressure on yourself, not comparing yourself to the person you work with or the person that you see on Instagram or Twitter, just comparing yourself to your own self, how you were yesterday and how you can do better for the next day.
That makes a lot of sense. I think now that you talked a little bit about the attitude that you had to have to rise up in the field and how go, go, go it is. And that connects to another question that we had, which is what advice do you have for people who are looking to start out in the cybersecurity field, but also in a cybersecurity consultant role?
Starting out in the cybersecurity field. I have a video on this. So if you want my like 20, 30-minute long explanation, you can go on YouTube and find it. However, the shortened synopsis version of it is find something that interests you, whether that's red teaming, blue teaming, purple, application security, incident response, whatever it is. Just find something that really piques your curiosity and make a plan to get better at it. Free things that you can do to bolster your chances to get a job in cybersecurity. There are plenty of online courses offered by top universities, Harvard, MIT, Princeton, that you can find online that are centered around cybersecurity fundamentals. TryHackMe has a free subscription, completely free, where they give you access to hundreds of different learning paths. If you want to learn about networking, if you want to learn about incident response, digital forensics, pretty much anything you can think of, they have that for free. You can utilize Hack the Box. You can spin up a home lab. I believe that Microsoft Azure gives a $100 credit to college students who are wanting to get their hands into Azure. That's another option. I would recommend joining Discord groups. Off the top of my head, there's Certification Station, there's Information Security Prep. Those are both free and they're filled with thousands of like-minded individuals who are trying to bolster their skill sets, whether it's in blue teaming or red teaming. Getting to talk to people in the industry is huge. If you go on meetup.com, you can find local cybersecurity groups that, whether they meet online or they happen to meet in person, they all get together and talk about cybersecurity. So enhancing your network so that if you do apply for a job one day in cybersecurity and you met Roger at your meetup.com event, Roger will remember your name and say, oh, I remember, sitting down next to them and grabbing a coffee with them at the meetup group. That person stands out to me. So increasing those connections and honestly finding someone to mentor. It doesn't have to be a very formal mentor. You don't have to say, let's meet once a week at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays every week. It can be super casual, exchanging an email back and forth, that kind of thing. Just getting someone's advice and guidance on what they should be doing to get into the field.
Nice. Do you have any advice for anyone who's already in the cybersecurity field but maybe would want to transition into a consultant role?
Mhm. So I actually began in cybersecurity doing internal security. If people aren't familiar with the differences, internal security is where you're doing cybersecurity for one company. You're not working with any clients. You're just upholding that individual company's cybersecurity and keeping them from being, attacked and responding to the incident. People always ask me, which is your favorite? Did you like internal security more or do you like consulting more? Consulting is going to make you more money. That's the very blunt of it. If you're after the money, consulting generally 9 times out of 10, unless you're working for Apple, Facebook, Netflix, what have you, is going to make you more money. Consulting is also known to be a bit more difficult. And that's because instead of just focusing on one organization's security posture, you're now focusing on perhaps 10, 20, your clients, all of your clients' security posture. And you can get pulled in several different directions. One client might have an issue one day at 3 p.m., and then you might find another client has an issue that same day at 5 p.m. And then suddenly you're kind of getting pulled in different directions. If you want to get into consulting, though, which I absolutely love consulting, I work on, like we said in the beginning, IBM's X Force team. It's the best decision I ever made, the smartest people I've ever worked with. And I'm thankful every day to be working in the consulting capacity that I am. I would definitely try to, get in touch with someone who has a consulting job, perhaps shadow them. I think that's a huge benefit to understand what their actual day is like. And then send out your applications. Be prepared to answer the question that you're going to be asked, what consulting experience do you have? And if you don't have any, what you can say is, I don't have any consulting experience. However, in my past jobs, I'm used to balancing multiple different things at different times. I'm a great communicator. I know how to strategize. I know how to not let myself become stressed out and overwhelmed. I know how to prioritize what's on my plate. If I'm currently working one fire, but then I see another fire get bigger, I can effectively transfer myself to work on what's most important at the time. Organizations who are hiring consultants, they don't necessarily need you to have past consulting experience because then how would anyone get into consulting, right? But having that ability to focus on what's most important, communicate effectively, speak really well and express your ideas to different levels of people within an organization, all the way from a security analyst up to the CISO. Those are going to be some of the great bullet points you're going to want to run down when you're interviewing for consulting positions.
Definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense, focusing on those soft skills, but also leveraging the current cyber experience that you have.
Right.
Mhm. Another question that we had submitted to us via Twitter is, what do you like about incident response in cybersecurity, or how did you figure out that's something that you wanted to do?
So when I was first beginning in cybersecurity at my old organization, TD SYNNEX, everyone was responsible for handling incident response. It was a shared responsibility between the SOC, or Security Operations Center. And I just remember my first large incident handling it, the adrenaline rush, the challenge of trying to remediate the issue in a timely manner so that there wasn't a larger impact to the organization, the challenge of working with several different teams in IT throughout the organization, working with legal and communications on all these various departments to handle the incident. I loved how it brought everyone together. I think that's one of the most inspiring things about incident response is that it brings so many different teams who normally don't speak to each other or work with each other together, and they'll have to work together as one to achieve a common goal. What I really loved about incident response, how fast paced it was, how challenging it was. Like I mentioned, it really gets my adrenaline going. I tend to learn something new every single time that there's an incident. And also, one of my favorite things about incidents is that they inspire change. Unfortunately, there's two kind of things that happen in organizations that get security to move forward. It's either one, there's a change in management, two, there's a change in budget. Or I guess there's three things. Three, the most common one is you have an incident, you get hacked, you get popped, as we say, and they realize, oh heck, our security posture isn't as good as we thought it was. And then they suddenly find the money to implement the change. It was never there before, but somehow it's there now. So I love the fact that incident response is very meaningful work. I love that when there's an incident, especially in a consulting capacity, when clients come to us, it's their worst day usually in the existence of their organization. But for a consultant who does incident response for a living, we experience those worst days over and over and over again. But it never loses its importance. It never loses the poignancy of, if this incident has a huge impact, if it winds up on the evening news, then people could lose their jobs, stocks could plummet, right? Stakeholders could all get really frustrated. There's just a plethora of things that, draw me to incident response, but those are some of the main things.
Our last question for you today is, what as an industry do you think we can do to attract more talent in the cybersecurity field?
I think, in my very own personal opinion, that it's not a lack of attracting talent that's the issue. It's not recognizing talent when it's in front of us, or not recognizing talent for the right reason. And what I mean by that is, you could have, and I hear this all the time, I have about 100,000 followers, subscribers, whatever you want to call them, across my various social media platforms. And I get people who reach out to me through direct message, email, what have you, every day. And they say, Meg, I've been doing Try Hack Me. I've been doing Hack the Box. I've been working on my home lab. I have great communication skills. I'm passionate about this. I want nothing more than to get a job in cybersecurity. And yet, when they go to interview, even if they're able to proficiently and effectively communicate how fantastic they would be for the job, they get turned down from the job because they don't have the experience, even if it's for an entry-level job. And so I think rather our issue is more of HR and management not communicating accurately what the needs are, and not recognizing potential talent when it's in front of them. I think we need to stop hiring for experience for these entry level jobs, the jobs that require 1 to 3 years of experience or no experience at all. And I think we need to start hiring based on potential, based on the kid who didn't go to college, but he earned his security plus, and he spent nights, sitting in front of his computer studying, and he's excited about cybersecurity. And he's going to be that person who's going to be in the office until gosh knows how late, because he cares about what happens to the company, right? I want to hire people and see people who are getting hired who genuinely care and are interested. And they're going to be a team player. They have exciting new ideas. They may not have the degree, but they're willing to learn. They're going to be a sponge and they're excited to learn. I think that's really the biggest issue. Oftentimes, when people go to apply to jobs in cybersecurity and they're looking at the job descriptions, they don't even apply because the job descriptions are so wildly inaccurate. The job description, perhaps for a cloud security person, might say, oh, you need to know JavaScript, and you need to do threat hunting, and you need to do incident response, and you also need to do system management, and you need to know about data loss prevention. And it's just too much, right? No one can do that. That's the jobs of 4 different people, not a cloud security person. So I think HR and management need to be able to much better and poignantly convey what they're looking for and know what they're looking for. I also think that companies need to pay more accurately, quite frankly. They can't ask for, 4 different jobs in one and then want to pay you $50,000 a year. No one's going to want to do that. So yeah, I could rant on that topic for a very long time, but that's pretty much the concise answer, is that you should apply to whatever job that you want. You should give it your best shot, put your best foot forward. And 2, we really need to have an industry-wide change of expecting people to have experience for these more entry-level roles. We need to start hiring based on potential instead of their past.
Especially with the cybersecurity skills gap in the hundreds of thousands, I think that is definitely
Exactly.
very key. But
Right.
yeah, that is unfortunately all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining us, Meg.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Madeline. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Ask Me Anything from Security Magazine. Remember to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter for the chance to have your questions answered in a future conversation. For more security leadership content, check out Security Magazine on LinkedIn Live, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or our site, securitymagazine.com. See you next time.